You like to torture your victims.
I enjoyed it. It was a game.
Oh, you're a serial killer!
Welcome to our countdown of the top 10 most notorious serial killers of the 20th century. These individuals committed some of the most horrifying crimes in modern history, leaving a lasting impact on our collective psyche. From their gruesome acts to the terrifying notoriety they gained, we delve deep into their lives and the chaos they unleashed. Viewer discretion is advised, as the content in this video is extremely disturbing.
Let's begin.
Hi, Nick.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing all right. How you doing?
Good. What's it like being in here all the time?
What's it like being in here? You have your problems with some staff don't like you, Jess. Oh, you're a serial killer! You know, Biz and stuff. And
Have you got any friends here at all?
no, I stick to myself. I just stick in the cell with myself. I don't even care about going outdoors. There's nothing out there. I don't smoke anymore.
So what's your day like? How does it start?
I spend 24/7 in the cell, watching TV, reading the Bible, writing letters to Dawn, sitting around doing a lot of thinking, preparing, going back in time, memory of everything I've been through in my life, and then just preparing for my death. Get all the tears out of me and stuff so I won't cry and jazz. You know.
Starting our list at number 10 is Aileen Wuornos, a name synonymous with one of the most notorious female serial killers in American history. Born in 1956 in Troy, Michigan, Aileen's early life was marred by severe abuse and abandonment. By her late teens, she was living on the streets and turned to prostitution as a means of survival. Between 1989 and 1990, Wuornos killed at least 7 men in Florida, claiming she was defending herself against attempted assaults. Her killings were brutal, involving shooting her victims at close range and often robbing them. Aileen was arrested in 1991 after her fingerprints were found in a victim's car. Her highly publicized trial and eventual execution by lethal injection in 2002 sparked debates on mental illness and justice, making her story a haunting reminder of the interplay between trauma and violence.
Well, I'm a serial killer. I've killed 8 women, 6 in this state and 2 in New York. I'm not a big serial killer, by the way. 8 people, that's nothing. I mean, there's a lot of other guys you can go see. I saw this woman walking along the road with a stroller. She saw me and I grabbed her. I told her that if she didn't do what I wanted, that I would smash the baby's head against the wall of the house. Where I think that's important is I've always said that I never understood why the women never really resisted me. I'm not a big, strong guy. Nobody ever seemed to fight. And I've always attributed to that I must say something like that, similar to the other victims. I raped her, strangled her. I left her for dead. The only reason she's not dead is has nothing to do with me.
Number 9 brings us to Michael Bruce Ross, known as the Roadside Strangler. Born in 1959 in Connecticut, Ross's childhood was plagued by abuse and psychological turmoil. His descent into darkness began in the 1980s when he embarked on a chilling spree of murder. Over the course of 3 years, Ross claimed the lives of 8 young women across the northeastern United States. He lured his victims to secluded areas where he would then brutally sexually assault and strangle them. His killing method was both calculated and terrifying, marked by a sadistic pleasure in his acts. Captured in 1984 after an intensive investigation, Ross's attempts to manipulate the justice system and his complex psychological profile added layers of horror to his story. Executed in 2005, Ross's legacy is a grim reminder of how trauma and psychological disorders can manifest into horrifying acts of violence.
You like to torture your victims.
I enjoyed it. It was a game. It's scary to a girl to have something done like that, to be so close to a knife, so to speak, pressed against you. The situations that I was seeking were more of a power trip. The power of holding someone's fate in your hands is a very powerful aphrodisiac. The adrenaline rush is like nothing. I mean, you're in complete control of somebody's destiny.
At number 8 is Richard Cottenham, the Torso Killer. Born in 1946 in New Jersey, Cottingham's facade as a dutiful family man concealed a monster. Between 1967 and 1980, Cottingham preyed on women, luring them with promises of safety before unleashing a nightmarish violence. His crimes were characterized by extreme brutality. His victims were often tortured, dismembered, and left in macabre states. Cottingham's killing spree was marked by the grisly removal of heads and hands, a signature of his sadistic nature. His capture in 1980 came after a hotel maid overheard one of his victims pleading for her life. Cottingham's chilling confessions and the horrific evidence found in his possession reveal a man driven by a deep, disturbing darkness. His case continues to evoke terror and revulsion, underscoring the horror that can lurk behind even the most benign of appearances.
Grandparents in the mountains, and 10 months later I murdered them. It made it worse to be on top of a mountain. I was literally on top of a mountain when it happened. And I sensed everybody in the world just stopping what they were doing, turning around, saw what I did, and are coming to get me. And I knew I was paranoid at that moment. I knew anybody that came up there and gave me a funny look or a fishy eye or quizzical look, I'd have blown their brains out thinking they were coming to get me. And if it had been in a city, I would have been a mass murderer at age 15. I would have killed until they gunned me down. I wouldn't have been able to reason my way out of it. I was scared to death, and I was violent. I felt my back hit that wall. I was the rabbit that always ran, that always backed away, always burned his bridges. And suddenly there weren't any more, and my back hit that wall, and I came out screaming and kicking.
Number 7 is Ed Kemper, the co-ed killer, whose very name sends shivers down the spine. Born in 1948, Kemper's early years were dominated by a cruel and domineering mother whose psychological abuse shaped his violent tendencies. Standing at an imposing 6'9", Kemper used his physical presence and charm to lure young women into his trap. Between 1972 and 1973, he murdered 10 people, including his own mother and her friend. His crimes were marked by a horrifying blend of necrophilia, dismemberment, and meticulous detail. Kemper's calm demeanor during his confessions and his detailed descriptions of his crimes add a layer of chilling normalcy to his horrific acts. Now serving life in prison, Kemper's case remains a deeply unsettling exploration of the mind of a serial killer and the impact of severe emotional trauma.
Got away with numerous murders of women in my life over a span of 50 years.
Tell me about North Little Rock. Tell me what that girl looked like.
He had buck teeth. He had a gap between the teeth, that's what it was.
Little grows disturbingly animated as he describes how he strangled his victims.
You know, she fighting for her life, and I'm fighting for my pleasure.
Yeah.
Little skinny black girl, real friendly. She was laughing while I was killing her.
Number 6. Samuel Little, a man whose name has become synonymous with unspeakable horror. Born in 1940, Little's claim to have murdered 93 people makes him the most prolific serial killer in United States history. Though he was convicted of 36, his killing spree, which spanned from 1970 to 2005, was marked by an unnerving pattern of violence against vulnerable women. Little's method of evasion, aided by his target's transient lifestyles, allowed him to continue his rampage across multiple states. His confessions, recorded with chilling detail, paint a horrifying picture of a man who took pleasure in his predatory acts. Arrested in 2012, Little's case highlights the grave challenges in tracking and apprehended serial killers. His death in 2020 closed the chapter of terror that left a profound impact on criminal investigation practices.
One of the final murders that you committed, of course, was apparently little Kimberly Leach, 12 years of age. I think the public outcry is greater there because an innocent child was taken from a playground. What did you feel after that? Were there the normal emotions 3 days later? Where were you, Ted?
I can't really talk about that right now.
That's too painful.
I would like to be able to convey to you what that experience is like, but I can't.
At number 5 is Ted Bundy, a name that resonates with fear and fascination. Born in 1946, Bundy was a master manipulator whose charm masked a dark, predatory nature. Between 1974 and 1978, Bundy's reign of terror saw him murder at least 30 young women, though the actual number may be much higher. Bundy's tactics were horrifyingly calculated. He used his charisma to lure victims into his grasp, only to subject them to brutal violence, necrophilia, and dismemberment. His arrest in 1978 was a turning point, but his trial captivated the nation, particularly as Bundy represented himself and used his charisma to sway public opinion. Executed in 1989, Bundy's legacy endures as a chilling reminder of the evil that can lurk behind an alluring exterior and the dangers of unchecked charm.
But I'll tell you this, that's a good example as to why insanity doesn't belong in the courtroom. Because if Jeffrey Dahmer doesn't meet the requirements for insanity, then I'd hate like hell to run into the guy that does.
Do you feel
Beyond that, I have no comment on Jeffrey Dahmer because I'm not Jeffrey Dahmer. And I would not, whether it's Berkowitz, whether it's Bundy, whether it's Williams, Wayne Williams down in Atlanta, or any of the others, or Charlie Manson. See, I don't comment about other cases for the simple fact is that I wasn't there.
Do you feel somewhat of a kinship with some of these people?
No, God, I hate that when they put me in the same club with them.
That's precisely the club that John Gacy belongs.
Number 4. John Wayne Gacy, the Killer Clown. His public persona was a grotesque mask hiding his monstrous nature. Born in 1942, Gacy was a successful businessman and a community figure, known for entertaining children as Pogo the Clown. Yet behind this facade lay a deeply depraved individual who lured young men and boys to his home, where he subjected them to horrific violence and murder. Gacy's crimes were marked by their grotesque brutality. He buried 26 victims under his house and discarded others in nearby rivers. His arrest in 1978 uncovered a horrifying scene of death and decay. Sentenced to death and executed in 1994, Gacy's case is a stark reminder of how evil can be masked by an outward normalcy and the horrors that can hide behind a charming smile.
Before I was on the mission, you know, I had voices for 2 years, getting good advice when I got depressed and thinking about my grandma was buried in the cemetery where I worked and that, you know. She lived with us, we were very close.
Yeah.
And I blamed myself for her death.
Yeah. Because
she was coming down the steps and we had two little kittens, you know, we were playing with them at the bottom of the steps. I was in the kitchen, sat at the table, and I heard a clumping down the steps.
Yeah.
And she was about nearly 80, you know, and a bit unsteady on her feet. And I said, Grandma, be careful. She was nearly at the bottom. I said, there's a kitten playing there. And clump, still kept coming down, you know. And she stepped on one, and all blood came out of its mouth, and she killed it, you know.
And number 3 is Peter Sutcliffe, the Yorkshire Ripper, whose name still sends chills across Britain. Born in 1946, Sutcliffe's reign of terror lasted from 1975 to 1980, a period marked by horrific violence and a cat-and-mouse game with law enforcement. Sutcliffe targeted vulnerable women, primarily sex workers, and women he deemed undesirable. His method was chillingly brutal. He used a hammer and screwdriver to inflict fatal injuries, often leaving his victims with grotesque facial wounds. The investigation into his crimes was plagued by failures and confusion. Exasperated by numerous false confessions and a lack of coordinated effort among police forces, Sutcliffe's capture in 1980 came after a stolen number plate led to his arrest. Convicted of 13 murders and sentenced to life in prison, he remained a figure of public horror until his death in 2020. His case remains a sobering reminder of the systemic failures in criminal investigations and the deep-seated issues of misogyny and societal neglect.
Not because I was angry with them, not because I hated them, but because I wanted to keep them with me. And as my obsession grew, I was saving body parts such as skulls and skeletons, and eventually I did turn to cannibalism.
It's for you.
He described how he picked up his victims in gay bars and brought them home.
I'd have the sleeping pill mixture already prepared. Person would drink it, fall asleep, and that's when they would be strangled.
And he made a startling admission about the evil urges that propelled him to kill.
Do you still feel those same urges? Do you still feel that compulsion, that obsession?
I wish I could say that it just left completely, but no, there are times when I still do have the old compulsions.
At number 2 is Jeffrey Dahmer, the Milwaukee cannibal, whose reign of terror shocked the world with its sheer brutality. Born in 1960, Dahmer's descent into depravity began in his late teens and culminated in a spree of horrific crimes that included necrophilia, dismemberment, and cannibalism. Over a period of 13 years, Dahmer murdered 17 young men and boys, luring them to his apartment with promises of money or companionship. The chilling details of his crimes, uncovered in 1991 after one of his intended victims managed to escape and alert authorities, revealed a nightmarish scene of human remains and dismembered bodies. Dahmer's arrest, trial, and subsequent murder by a fellow inmate in 1994 have left an indelible mark on criminal history, illustrating the depths of human depravity and the complex nature of mental illness.
Serial killers do on a small scale what governments do on a large one. They are a product of the times, and these are bloodthirsty times. Even psychopaths have emotions if you dig deep enough, but then again, maybe they don't.
Do you have emotions, Richard?
No comment.
Tell me what kind of emotions you got going through you right now.
I'll tell you what, I gave up on love and happiness a long time ago.
Why?
I don't care to explain that. Let the quote stand for itself. People in this day and age are brainwashed and programmed like a computer at being nothing more than puppets. This nation, this country is founded in violence. Violent delights tend to have violent ends. Madness is something rare in individuals, but in groups, people, and ages, it is a rule. Killing is killing.
Finally, at number 1 is Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, whose name strikes fear into the hearts of many. Born in 1960, Ramirez terrorized California with a reign of terror that lasted from 1984 to 1985. His crime spree included at least 14 murders, numerous sexual assaults, and burglaries, marked by an unrelenting brutality. Ramirez's approach was horrifyingly random. He would break into homes, often torturing and killing his victims in their sleep, leaving behind a scene of utter horror. The media dubbed him the Night Stalker as he instilled panic with his unpredictable attacks. His capture in 1985 was the result of a community effort in vigilantism, after his face was recognized from a police sketch. Sentenced to death and dying in 2013, Ramirez's case is a chilling reminder of the fear that a serial killer can spread and the horrors that can be inflicted by a single, sick individual. These 10 individuals represent some of the darkest chapters in human history. Their acts of terror leave indelible marks on our collective consciousness. Each story is a chilling reminder of the depths of human depravity and the often tragic intersections of mental illness, societal neglect, and unthinkable violence. As we reflect on these cases, we must remain vigilant and strive to understand the shadows that lurk in the darkest corners of the world. Thank you for joining us in this unsettling journey. If you found this video both informative and haunting, please like, share, subscribe for more. Stay safe and stay aware as the shadows of the past continue to remind us of the darkness that can reside within.